You're listening to The Secrets of Doctor Who, where we discuss everything about the hit BBC series Doctor Who. And today we're discussing the 10th Doctor in River Song Big Finish audio story, Precious and Annihilation. No, Precious Annihilation. I can speak. I'm Dom Bettinelli, and joining me today on the panel are Father Cory Sticha. Hey, Father Cory.
How's it going?
And Jimmy Akin. Hey, Jimmy.
Howdy, Dom.
Folks, be sure to get your very own Secrets of Doctor Who t-shirt or phone case or any other kind of stuff with our little logo slapped on it by visiting sqpn.com/merch. And stick around to the end of the episode. We do have more listener feedback. And I want to tell you about another show on the StarQuest Network you're sure to enjoy. I'm wearing the merch for that shirt, for that show. It's called Jimmy Akin's Mysterious World. You can find that wherever fine podcasts are found or at mysterious.fm. And there's a great image of me there. So if people watching the video can see me.
Next to the ghost.
Yes, to the ghost. That's right. And some other guy. And so let's talk about Precious Annihilation. And Jimmy, could you give us a recap of what happens in this one?
This week, the 10th Doctor and River Song show up in London in 1912. They're on the trail of some jewels that were recently dug up in a mine, and these jewels contain alien technology that causes them to implode and kill people. They trace the jewels back to the year 1632, 280 years earlier, where they were sold by a gem dealer named Gerard Pullman. However, they learned that the jewels were actually made by his apparent wife, a woman named O'Mara. Currently, Pullman is on a ship owned by the East India Company, and when they find him, they learn that some time ago, O'Mara tried to leave Pullman, but he couldn't bear to lose her and killed her. He also swears that the jewels were not meant to kill anybody, that they were only a backup plan, a safety feature. And O'Mara had previously planted similar artifacts on other worlds before planting them on Earth. To ensure that the artifacts were kept by the natives, she always disguises these devices as whatever a given culture considers valuable, which in this case was jewels. The artifacts, like the jewels, are powerful enough to destroy a planet, and they can't be stopped once they've started imploding, which, of course, they have in 1912. The sailors on the ship turn on Pullman and the Doctor and River, and Pullman jumps overboard to his death. But first, he gives the Doctor a locket that lets him communicate with O'Mara's ghost. The Doctor, River, and the TARDIS are then thrown overboard. After getting aboard the underwater TARDIS, the Doctor and River create a psychic link between the locket and the TARDIS uses that to take them to where O'Mara is in the year 1912. It turns out that O'Mara is a skeleton on an alien spaceship in a condemned mine, only the ship also has a digital consciousness version of O'Mara. She explains to the Doctor that her people plant the implodey treasures, like the jewels, on planets that have a history of destroying indigenous populations that may one day become a threat to their homeworld. It's a failsafe against future bad behavior by the planet, and Earth does have a history of destroying native populations. The Doctor has been to one of the planets that she destroyed, but he argues that Earth doesn't deserve this fate because of the good it will do in the future. Meanwhile, O'Mara's ship starts drawing power through the psychic link with the TARDIS, and River is afraid that O'Mara could then use the amplified range to trigger the implosion of all the planets that she's implanted with artifacts. But the Doctor lets her have this power and begs her to deactivate the artifacts. In the end, O'Mara does so, saving the Earth and perhaps other worlds. The Doctor offers to take O'Mara's digital imprint on board the TARDIS so she can live to see that her people's work was unnecessary. But O'Mara says that she's seen enough and doesn't want more life as a digital imprint, something that River very much agrees with, to the Doctor's chagrin, given that that's how he's going to save her at the end of her life. The end.
Okay. Father Cory, what'd you think of this one?
I enjoyed it. It was enjoyable listen. Of course, it is an audio book or audio story, so you have to. It's audio. You can only listen to it, but it was an enjoyable listen. It was a lot of fun. The interaction between David Tennant's Doctor and River Song is always, it was a treat. Because that is kind of one thing that we miss. We only see the two of them together in her final story, technically, in his first story with her, the Doctor's first story with her. So get to a little more interaction. I know there's other stories out there as well that the Big Finish has done. Worth investigating as well.
Very good. How about you, Jimmy? What'd you think of this?
Yeah, I thought it was enjoyable. I didn't enjoy it as much as the previous 10th Doctor and River Song story we covered, Expiry Dating, but it was enjoyable, and as Father Cory points out, it is the first time after Silence in the Library and Forest of the Dead that we've actually had the two of them physically interacting during an adventure, because they don't technically meet during Expiry Dating, but here they do, and they get to go on an adventure together.
I like this one. It felt short, although it wasn't. It was a full hour, almost an hour long story. It felt like it went pretty quick. I missed some of those details that you related in the recap, Jimmy. And I'm thinking back going, oh yeah. For some reason, maybe it's just I don't pick up on the audio stuff as well as I do when it's a visual component. But I did like, as you both mentioned, the Tennant's Doctor and River, Alex Kingston's River, interacting. It had the same energy and chemistry, and the writing really captured it. So I did enjoy that. I was curious about the dual time range that they were in. They were 1912 and 1632, and the Pullman was all in 1632, traveling from India aboard an East India merchant ship, which is pretty early, isn't it? 1632.
Well, they had the East India Company then. I wasn't clear if he was traveling to or from India.
Right.
I thought it sounded like he was from.
Yeah.
Because they said he'd been out of his workshop for years.
Right. And yeah. And was he married to someone else as well before?
No. As far as I didn't pick up on that. As far as I know, he was only Omara was popularly regarded as his wife.
Right. Okay.
And he had met her in India at a facility that was processing diamonds that had been mined in India, and he was enchanted by her and by her ability to enchant the jewels and just make stuff out of them magically. They would reform themselves for her. And he eventually took her to England, which was his home, but he knew it wasn't really hers. And then at some point she was going to leave him, and he killed her, and he left again.
Okay. And but he killed her in England or in India?
Yeah, in England. That's how, and that's how her skeleton ends up in the mine.
Okay,
yep.
Right. And that's the mine is where the Cheapside hoard is found, and that's what the 1912 part of the story is, in this area of London called Cheapside, which I gather is not a real place, but perhaps. I tried to look it up, but I didn't find it. But this hoard of jewelry was discovered and unearthed, and included these explosive jewels. Apparently, the Cheapside hoard shows up again in Big Finish in a 2021 story called 11's 11, which is a play on Ocean's 11. The
11 is a villain, that Time Lord who has a kind of regenerative dissociative identity disorder. He shows up in a lot of Big Finish.
Nice.
Okay, that might be worth a look. Yeah.
Oh, even more. I was going to talk to you all about this. After that one, in that same unit set, they have a story featuring Tom Baker as the curator called The Curator's Gambit. And I thought, we should do some curator stories, because there are a few of them that Big Finish has.
Nice. Yeah, that sounds great. I would love to hear some more Tom Baker.
Speaking of Tom Baker, we should mention that as we record this, it's like a day or two after his 90th birthday.
Yeah, happy birthday, Tom.
Yes, the timeless Time Lord. and so they have one of the things they discover about the exploding jewel. Not everything that is uncovered is exploding. There's this actually really bizarre episode right when the Doctor shows up. He's at a pub and then River's there pretending to be a waitress, and another waitress there has these earrings of jewels. And as she walks away, they explode and presumably blow her head off.
Implode.
implode. Oh, which is even worse. Which that sounds messy. But it was like, wow, that's really dark.
Yeah,
there, that happens. And that's
and
what
it's
happens.
done off screen, so to speak. You can hear it in the background that something happened, and then they say, "Oh, her head just," something like her head just imploded.
Like how would these work? Like, what would be how would the damage be caused with an implosion? Would it like be sucking things into a particular spot?
Yep. And that's how we trigger hydrogen bombs and a lot of nuclear bombs is with an implosion that then compresses the uranium or plutonium into a small enough space that it goes critical.
Oh, right. Okay. Yes, that's true. That's true. And presumably that Amara there's got to be a lot of these around the planet to destroy a whole planet, right?
Well, I don't think so, the way they set it up. So they give a name to the alien substance. When River and the Doctor get to Pullman's workshop, they're looking at the shelves and they're both gobsmacked because in front of them they're seeing apparently multiple jars of a substance called coralthracite. And coralthracite is as River describes it, an intelligent volatile compound. It can be programmed, but very few people know how to program it. It is illegal, and possession of it carries the death penalty on every known world because it can blow up a planet. And they don't make it sound like you need a huge amount to do that. River confesses to the Doctor that she has actually, even though she wasn't stealing jewels, she did use coralthracite to blow a safe. And he's not very happy with that revelation.
Right. Well, and they said that one of the jewels that was made was a large jewel for the king.
Mm-hmm. In the
the King of England. Yeah.
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 So that would be, they make bigger and smaller jewels and spread them around, and it can.
Right. That's true. So you wouldn't need that many in order to destroy an entire planet, I guess. Okay. It's interesting. So when Pullman boards the ship presumably in India or wherever it is that he's on, it's like he treats the jewels like his children. He's sort of obsessive about the jewels. He's got this. He talks to them, and when he's handing them out though to various people, kind of I guess continuing Amara's mission of spreading the jewels around.
Well, he sees the jewels obviously as a link to her. And that's part of it. But then, he realized that her mission was to spread these jewels throughout for whatever reason. Whatever reason that I doubt she told him the reason why she wanted these jewels put, because it doesn't really say anything like that he knew that she was actually going to use them to destroy or as a fail-safe against the world.
Well, he does know that. He knows it. He says it was never the intent to to kill anybody. He says that a few times. He says they were a fail-safe. So he knows they've got some kind of destructive function. What I liked about him is they describe some of the artifacts, and they don't focus on it a lot, but they talk about, okay, this one's made out of diamond, this one's made out of ruby, this one's made out of emerald, and they have distinct forms. Like one of them is a clock that is in an emerald. So you've got an enormous emerald big enough to hold a 16th century clock. Another which River has that she carries around with her is an emerald frog pendant, I guess, or brooch or something, but it's described as the emerald frog. Right.
By the way, I found in my notes they were traveling from Persia. That was the or modern day Iran. So that's where he was coming from. I mean, Gerard isn't well, is he? I mean, mentally or emotionally. I mean, he's sort of. Although at one point, River asked the Doctor, "Is Gerard good or bad? Pullman, is he good or bad?" And the Doctor says, "A bit of both."
Yeah,
which I suppose describes humanity in general, right? I mean, most people are a bit of good and a bit of bad, all wrapped up in one package.
Yeah, the bad is the bad is he killed his wife. The good is he's not really trying to kill anybody else.
Right. I mean, that's pretty bad that he killed his wife because she was leaving him. That's pretty bad. And it presumably has sort of broken his mind since then, I guess.
Setting us up for his suicide.
Right. And that becomes when the sailors aboard the ship, they think that he's a Jonah, he's cursed, that the ship, he's odd to begin with, and he's carrying this giant treasure, and then the ship encounters bad weather, and sailors, being sailors, they're superstitious.
They even call the box that he's using a casket multiple times.
Right.
So you can imagine that he's actually got these jewels all in an actual casket.
Yeah, I mean, casket used to have a more generic meaning, I think, in the sense of just something that holds things. But they think that there's bodies in some of these boxes, some of these caskets. Yeah.
There's also a scene aboard ship. Now, this is, so you commented, Dom, about it seeming kind of short. And I agree. I mean, it's only an hour long, so it's not super long. To me, the first part of it, before they get to the ship, went a little slow. I was thinking, wow, this is a really simple plot so far. And all the complexity, because in my summary, you could hear how complex it was. All that detail comes out in the second half.
Yep.
Yeah.
So it gets much more intellectually intense once they get on board the ship. They have a few encounters, like I mentioned. They find the Coralthricite in his workshop. They also talk to a woman who is from upstairs with the improbable name Fanny Brokepot. Which the doctor says, like, Fanny Brokepot, like he doesn't really believe that's her name, but she says she's from upstairs and she's got a husband who has gout that is not well, and that's why she's coming down here to investigate the noises she's hearing in Pullman's shop. And she gives them some background about Pullman and his wife Omara, which kind of sets them up for what they later learn. Then when they get to the ship, they have the doctor interrogating Pullman in his cabin. And meanwhile, River goes out and has a duel with the with the sailors, where she's, I guess, imitating a pirate queen or something. And she says she wins the sword fight, but then they cheated and used a pistol. But the TARDIS, she beams the TARDIS into Pullman's cabin and gets out of it and is talking to the doctor. And this, like, mystified the sailors. They saw this blue box and she gets in it and then it disappears, and they force their way into the cabin. Now, previously during the sword fight, the captain of the ship, Captain Bickle, had told her that she was like a sea witch, and River is like, "Oh, maybe I am." But then when they force their way into the cabin, and the TARDIS is there, and the sailors are wanting to, like, force their way into the TARDIS, thinking it maybe is one of Bickle's caskets or one of Pullman's caskets. The doctor holds them off and says, "If you thought the sea witch was scary, you should see what I keep in the laundry room."
That was good. And the sailors actually throw the TARDIS overboard at one point. And the doctor and River have to jump overboard and board the TARDIS underwater, which is unique.
Basically dive into the TARDIS.
Yeah.
Kind of like River did in the Silence episode.
Yeah, except that was in the air. Like, this was, they had to dive into it from the water. And, of course, the shields, or whatever they call it, kept the water out for a time.
Yeah, the doctor says that the atmospheric shield bubble won't hold at this depth, and I'm like, that's nonsense. If it holds in space, it'll hold underwater.
Yeah, exactly. And then they dive in. But before that, Pullman jumps overboard, sort of commits suicide to get away from, so I think maybe partly guilty conscience and partly to get away from the sailors, but he knew he was doing. He knew he was killing himself.
He was also suffering mentally, and he heard the digital ghost of Omara saying in his head, "There's only one way to end the suffering."
Right. So yes, he would. He jumped overboard, and they couldn't rescue him. They didn't see him, I guess. Like the doctor asked River, he
asked River.
Yeah. Did you see him?
And she says she didn't, and he's like, poor Pullman.
Yeah.
Well, and they kind of hint that something bad happened to him because River's looking at the TARDIS databanks and they look up his name and go, oh, like how he ended, and kind of went, they made it clear that it was a not pleasant death.
Right. They knew ahead of time that he was going, like, they didn't tell us, but they knew, but it's clear in retrospect, they knew ahead of time he died
on this trip.
On this trip, jumping overboard or falling overboard, depending on how that gets recorded in the ship's log. So
River also knew about the fates of the crew, because she tells Captain Bickle that, because he's like, I'm not going to be slain by a woman, and it's like, oh, don't worry, you won't be.
Yeah.
But then he takes that as a threat, and so he says the Sea Witch, out of the presence of the Doctor and River, he says the Sea Witch told me that I'm going to die on this trip. I intend to survive, and since I'll never work for the East India Company again, he decides to raid Pullman's jewels.
Right.
And literally blast open the cabin with the cannon.
Yeah.
Yes.
Which is a little over the top.
Yes. They got a cannon down there.
I mean, setting off a cannon and aiming at your own ship is not a good idea. Just use an axe on the door if it's locked.
They would have used an axe, yes. A cannonball would not stop just going through the door. It would keep going, presumably through the side. So Amara's people are the Repions, I were told, and they, like you said, Jimmy, they find planets that could pose future threats, and then plant explosives on those planets so that if they do become a threat, then they preemptively take them out. And I'm like, that is so devious. Like it's like worthy of the CIA, I mean, it's just, you wonder, have we planted things? No, I don't even want to go there.
To our CIA handlers, no, we do not believe that you have planted things to blow up the Earth.
They do give us an example, though, which the Doctor has been to, of a world where this actually happened. I mean, she's planted them on a bunch, but the Doctor mentions a world named Dereka, which he at first says is like a barren rock. But then when he's talking to Amara, he says, I remember Dereka. And she explains that the planet had nukes, and they were ruining their own planet and had a lack of funds for terraforming. So they couldn't keep up their ecosystem on the planet, and that was going to cause them to start exploring and conquering other planets. And she says they had explored the Repion galaxy. They'd sent someone there. And they had a history of terminating native populations, so we triggered the treasures on their planet. And they can take other forms besides jewels. They mention like books and art relics also as treasure types that O'Mara had used elsewhere. So yeah, they did in Dereka, and the Doctor has to admit, Earth and the East India Company, some not so great history with native populations.
Sounds like the Repions Dereka'd the place. I think it was interesting. Like, they disguised the things as stuff we would love to make sure we didn't throw them away. So we would keep them close. The means of our own destruction would be kept close.
Because you could always, I guess, if you described them as something people don't want, you could throw them into a nuclear reactor or something, or, you could destroy them in some way.
Yeah. People keep them close by, and then that's how we destroy ourselves. Kind of interesting. It's a bit of a stretch, frankly. I think that's, if you're going to plant explosives, that could destroy a planet. You don't need to make them you just bury it in the ground, like where no one would find it. If you're going to destroy it. So that was a bit of a stretch.
Like Empress Giorgio did in the final episode of Star Trek Discovery Season 1 with the Klingon homeworld.
Right. Yes, that's exactly what she did. So the Doctor, in the end, wants to keep Amara's psychic trace alive on the TARDIS, as you mentioned, because he was afraid that if the psychic trace died, it would be like a fail-safe trigger where she would trigger all the jewels on all the planets.
I didn't get that.
Oh, okay. That's what I thought.
He just wanted her to live so she could see.
Exactly.
Because he views digital life as a form of life. And River is like, oh, what kind of a life would that be? And so she's dissing on where she's going to end up. And he already knows that because he's already met her.
Right.
Okay. Yeah, I guess I misunderstood then. Because sometimes the dialogue goes by really quick, and with the accents, it can be tricky to grasp.
Yeah,
I actually use
he talked about more of trying to convince her that, okay, you need to see where Earth is going to end up. You need to see what the future of this planet is. That destroying it would be would damage the timeline and all that.
Okay. And he talks about it in terms of the good that Earth's going to do. But frankly, if you look at all the future Earths we've seen, they're not utopias by any means on Doctor Who.
No.
I guess you have, there tend to be soulless corporations running things. But I guess there are planets where they have apple grass and everything is happy.
Yeah. Don't show her 2024. Yeah. Don't show her 2024. She'll just put us out of our misery right then and there. But there's an interesting line where she dies, quote unquote. The trace is turned off, and the doctor does say, "I could have saved her," which brought to mind me two episodes, The Giggle and The Fires of Pompeii. The 10th Doctor, being all about, I could have saved them. Although in Fires of Pompeii, it wasn't the Doctor; it was Donna who was all about, you could have saved them. But it was in The Giggle where the Doctor was like, I could save them. So it was kind of interesting to hear that I could have saved her regret again.
Yeah, but River points out to him she doesn't want this. So you can't impose your will on her and save her against her will.
Do we ever have? Are there any stories? I know not in live action, but are there any stories about River post the Silence in the Library?
Yes. There's an entire box set of the Diary of River Song that is set in her digital afterlife.
Interesting. Matt might be worth if you think it's worthwhile. It might be worth looking at because I'm curious.
I've heard it. It's interesting what they do with it.
Yeah,
nice.
Yeah. All right. Any other notes on this one, Father Cory?
So the actress who voices the female voices, so Omara, the barmaid, and Fanny is Anjali. I'm gonna slaughter her name. Forgive me for that, but Anjali Mohindra, and she's been in Doctor Who before. When the Nikola Tesla episode, she was the queen of the
Scorpion People.
Yep, the queen of the Scorpion People, and she is in a relationship. Her partner is Sacha Dhawan. So she's in a relationship with the Master.
She also apparently played Rani Chandra in the Sarah Jane Adventures. So I don't know if that's the Rani.
Oh, she's Ron. Oh no, it's
Ronnie not the was Ronnie as in the Time Lord.
Yeah, no, Ronnie was one of the main characters in the Sarah Jane Adventures. She was one of the teens that Sarah Jane took care of.
Interesting. Okay. That was, she was all of those female character names.
Yeah, and I want my Sacha Dhawan Master set from Big Finish.
Yes.
Make it happen, Big Finish. Make it happen. Anything else, Father Cory?
Nope, that's it.
How about you, Jimmy? Anything else?
Nope, not really.
Okay. So let's get to our feedback then. This feedback comes in on the two of the recent specials, The Giggle and The Church on Ruby Road. It came from Matt via email, who says, a quick comment about The Giggle. I enjoyed your discussion as usual, but you missed a nifty, subtle callback that Russell T. Davies planted right at the very end of the episode. The last thing we hear from the 14th Doctor is a statement of how much he loves the moles that Wilf has been trying to shoot. This seems completely random unless one thinks back all the way to Ten's first appearance in the Children in Need special, Born Again, that preceded the Christmas invasion. There, in the process of assessing his new body, he announces, I've got a mole. I can feel it. Between my shoulder blades is a mole. That's all right. Love the mole. I have to admit that I didn't notice this myself. It was pointed out on the Doctor Who Flashcast podcast. And then he says, and concerning the Church on Ruby Road, I'm sure it's already been pointed out by now, but Davina McCall was not mentioned in Bad Wolf, the Ninth Doctor episode. Rather, she voiced the Davina droid, her robotic counterpart, that controlled the futuristic Big Brother house the Doctor wakes up in.
Yeah, I remember the Big Brother house in that episode. what I remember more, I think it was Linda with a Y that the Doctor was interacting with in the Big Brother house. What I remember more is the weakest link with the android.
Yep.
Yes.
Which was also voiced by Ann Richardson or whatever her name is.
Yep.
When it comes to the mole thing, it's been forever since I've seen that Children in Need special. It was like this year's. It's like a little scene,
Yeah.
But so I'd have to go back and check. I would be somewhat skeptical since we're of a connection, since we're talking about two different types of moles, the animal versus the skin formation. But if he said love the mole in that, then okay, yeah, I'd agree. That's too on the nose to be a coincidence. That would be a deliberate callback.
And I never even seen. I didn't know that Children in Need special even existed. I'll have to go find it now.
Right. Is the Flashcast the Doctor Who Flashcast? Is that the official Doctor Who podcast or a different one?
I'm
not familiar with that one.
Yeah, because there is now a Doctor Who podcast. At least there was during the specials. I don't know.
Official. Yeah.
There have been various official ones. Like there was one I remember back during the 12th Doctor's time that had this. It was hosted by a young woman who had this enormous quiff of hair that she was very proud of that looked kind of like the Doctor's. So there have been various iterations, and Doctor Who Confidential was another one. There's another kind of new documentary mini series about the show now. It has a different name. So there have been a variety of different official ones, but there's loads of unofficial ones like ours.
That's right. I have to be honest. I don't listen to a lot of other ones because
I have a job.
Yeah, well, that too.
That too.
I mean, I listen to a lot of podcasts, but I tend to avoid ones that are on subjects that we also cover because I don't want to unconsciously, mimic or steal from others. I mean, not steal, but I want to keep my own impressions my own, right? That sort of thing. So
I looked up the Doctor Who Flashcast is from another podcast network called the Incomparable.
Oh, Incomparable.
Incomparable. I can't even say it.
Yeah, Jason Snell's network. Yeah,
Jason Snell, from Twit and CNET and things like that from way back when.
He used to be the editor of Macworld. I actually have listened to a lot of his other podcasts, so those are really good. I recommend making his. Excellent. Well, thank you, Matt.
I have a different policy. I check out the competition.
Yes. That is good because you actually bring some interesting stuff, and you're probably better at segregating that out from your own thoughts, which I would not be. All right, excellent. So that brings us to the end of this episode, and before we go, we'd like to take a moment to thank our patrons who make it possible for us to create The Secrets of Doctor Who, including Cheryl W., Jonathan F., John D. and Kathy B., Stephen B., and Shay J. Their generous donations at sqpn.com/give make it possible for us to continue The Secrets of Doctor Who and all the shows at StarQuest, and you can join them by visiting sqpn.com/give. And we'd also like to thank Zyman Yannick, who edited this episode. So that's it from us. We'd love to know what you think of Precious Annihilation. You can let us know by commenting on the show at sqpn.com or the Secrets of Doctor Who Facebook page. Send an email to drwho@sqpn.com or visit the StarQuest Discord community at sqpn.com/discord. And, of course, you can watch The Secrets of Doctor Who on our YouTube channel at youtube.com/StarQuestMedia, where you can also leave a comment, and you can also like and subscribe. We'll be back next time when we'll be discussing the second Doctor story, The Invasion. And until then, Jimmy Akin, thank you for joining me and sharing The Secrets of Doctor Who.
Thanks, Tom.
Father Cory Sticha, thank you as well.
Thank you, Dom.
And once again, I'm Dom Bettinelli. Thank you for listening to The Secrets of Doctor Who on StarQuest, and remember, prove your people do this out of love and not fear, because everyone has their version of the thing they kill to protect.